Hey, folks, thanks for joining us for the Breakthrough Advisor podcast. I'm Jack Martin, virtual CMO for InsureMark. I want to welcome you. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us. This is where the top advisors in the country today are coming to learn what they should be doing to take their practice to the next level, to level up, to break through. So today, I couldn't be more excited. We've got Laura Garfield, whose team at Idea Decanter does an amazing job in the financial services space. Laura, welcome to the Breakthrough Advisor podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Jack.
So for the two or three people who are listening who don't know who you are, maybe catch them up. Where did you come from? What's your background? How'd you get to this parking place? What's the deal?
Well, in a nutshell, I stumbled into it. I spent the first decade of my career in TV news and then found myself on the West Coast in Portland, where my co founder and I both needed jobs and decided to start a video marketing company that was actually focused on the wine industry because there are about 800 wineries in Oregon and about 900 in Washington where she lived. And we thought, wow, wouldn't this be fun? We love tasting new wine. We love making marketing videos. These go hand in hand. And as we started sharing our videos out, this is back in 2014, on LinkedIn, some financial advisors I knew started reaching out and saying, hey, really like that video on the harvest and the crush. Would you be interested in creating a value proposition video for the homepage of our website? Natural leap, I'm sure. And about a year into the business, we took a hard look at where we were and thought, projecting out into the future, where will we be if we stay in wine 5 years from now? Because the wine folks tried to trade cases of wine for our work. And where would we be if we stuck to financial services, which 10 years later, that's the path we chose.
Good call. Good call. I have to say there is kind of an intersect there. So I don't know if you remember this commercial that Schwab had, but it's this couple walking through the vineyard, right? So they plan their retirement, and the theme is something like, they've hit their number. What's your number? Okay, and so there are 1,000 problems with that whole tagline and that whole vision for the average person who's thinking about retirement, but there is some kind of nexus there. So that's really interesting. I wasn't aware of that. So you're a recovering reporter. Is that what's happening?
I'm a recovering reporter and I really like asking the questions more than being on the receiving end. So, Jack, tell me a little bit about how you got to where you are.
Oh, this is a long and winding story, as Patrice can tell you. So, 3 decades in the space. RIACFP built and managed one of the largest branch offices at Osaic when it was first Integrated Resources, then Royal Alliance, then Advisor Group. So, cashed out of a boutique IMO that my wife and I built. And so, here we are. Pursuing a passion for marketing. We built our success around helping our advisors grow their business. So it seemed logical, to go do something that we really enjoyed as opposed to chasing compliance questions or trying to make sure that ACATs got funded or that sort of thing. So this is way more interesting, way more
The
interesting.
C word, compliance.
There you go. All right. Well, that's your question for the interview, by the way. Um, hey, so catch us up a little bit on what you and your team are seeing in the space. I think as we were talking in the warm up, we were very early adopters in the use of video. Maybe 5 years ago, we started first internally and then externally trying to talk about it. And I think it's evolved a lot. I would say in the last 12 to 15 months, really exploded in terms of advisors embracing the concept and starting to use it, starting to invest in it. And I think, there's a lot of nuance to it now that wasn't there before. I think we understand that there are marketing videos like you were doing for the wine industry and for those advisors in the early days, and there are also sales videos that advisors and business development teams are using in sequences to try and nurture prospects along. What are you and your team seeing in terms of the evolution of the tool?
Well, I think the biggest trend we're seeing right now is in snackable content, that short format video content, as attention spans get shorter and shorter. So in 2014, when we started, I would say the average video length that we created for folks who are kind of at the top of the funnel, those prospects who are just getting to know you, would be, maybe around 3 minutes. That has shrunk to about 2 minutes these days, but there are many ways that you can use short format content that's either 60 seconds or less, or even 30 seconds or less. And I think it says a lot about how we're consuming video content, how much we're seeing, and the shrinking of our attention spans. But Jack, you mentioned, there are different jobs for videos. Some of those jobs are for marketing, client relationships, and some of them are for more on the prospect side. What I take a step back and look at is that's really the basics of marketing. Where do you start? And that is, who is your target audience? Before you decide what to say and how to say it, you have to know who you're talking to. And so one of the first steps when you are creating video content is really to decide, what am I trying to accomplish with this, and who am I trying to reach, so that you can develop a message that really resonates with that audience.
Well said. Well said. I think uh, the the thing that I hope advisors embrace is the concept that video can be an alternative to text and to phone calls. And in certain instances, it can be an alternative to a face-to-face IRL situation, right? And that's not to say that we just don't go all video, but in this in and I think that the canned produced, step and rinse background kind of video situation, may have been an early iteration, but I think that people want to connect with people. And so
Mm-hmm.
maybe this whole COVID thing, was catalyst to get us further down the path of video. So, what do you think? How does that come into play for an
Yeah,
advisor?
I
How should they think
mean,
about it?
people do want to connect with people. And that's why sharing something personal in video works so well. And let me give you an example. I record a video once a quarter for partners of our business, Idea Decanter. And so for financial advisors, you could extrapolate this would work just as well with the COIs for you in your business. And I do it in a really, lowbrow kind of way. I just record it on Loom, which is a free platform up to a certain number of videos. I have the paid account because I use it a ton. But for this partner update video, I actually just dig up something personal that's going on with me, because all of our partners do know me and people connect with people. And so I recorded a video this morning that just simply said, "Hey, just got back from my vacation in the Ozarks at Camp Lucky Duck." We do this every 4th of July because the dock is perfectly positioned at the end of a cove where the biggest fireworks display on the whole lake is set off right from the end of the cove. It was amazing. And we did stand-up paddleboarding. We floated around on the lily pad. We were boating and out on the jet skis. And it was just a fantastic week with my family. Then I added a quick update on what's going on, this quarter with Idea Decanter. Really, really short, and wished them, the best, and that they have a great summer, and that they do take some time out to do what matters most to them. Now, that's a video. I just grab the little GIF or GIF. I still have not decided which I landed on, but I drop it into an email, write a little personal note, and send it out. And I just always get great feedback from partners. And I would say 75% of those emails then launch into a different kind of discussion about, how can we be better partners, and what can we do next? Should we plan a webinar? Can I guest blog? All of those things. And it really goes back to, it's video, and an email with video gets 200% more engagement than a video or an email without video. And B, I'm just sharing something personal. So it helps people feel like they're connected with me. And then you can move into, and what's next?
Yeah. I think some of that is sales radar, right? I mean, if you see a highly produced GIF, pop up on your screen. You know, I for one, have my sales radar go off. So I'm a little, okay, so what's this person selling me? They've invested a lot of money. And so I think that you called it the lowbrow approach. I think the more casual, more personal, more authentic kind of style, you know, breaks through that. What do you think?
I think so. I mean, there are advisors who can comfortably step in front of their webcam or the camera on their phone and just blurt out an engaging message on their own. There are advisors who really would like something that is more planned and possibly more polished. We talked about the evolution of attention spans. I think there's also been an evolution in the decade we've been doing this in the acceptance of more DIY looking video. In 2014, 2015, you really needed it to be highly polished. I think these days, and probably as part of a byproduct of COVID, the DIY kind of look, the less polished, is definitely more accepted. But I would say when it comes to someone's first impression with your brand, having something that is more polished can be important.
100%. 100%. Yeah,
Mm,
I think when folks are in that awareness stage and they're starting to suss out, whether you're a viable option for them, I agree with you 100%. As part of that online presence, online research for the proposition. One of the things we've coached the business development teams that we work with to do is to skip the long text when they're doing emails in sequence and to just tease the video. Hey, I put together this short video because you look like other people we work with and you might need yada yada. And so, we literally have them using little whiteboards that have the guy's name on it.
mhm,
And it's amazing the difference in open rates and click rates that you get with that little bit of personalization in there.
yep.
Um, the tendency is I'm just going to do a one to many. This one video will go out to a number of people, and so we'll just put it in the sequence, we'll blast it out, and I can show you the data, the response rates, the conversion rates, which is really what the sales and marketing process is ultimately all about, right? The conversion rates are substantially higher. So, I think there's a place for all of that. Don't you agree?
Yeah, and I would say that there is a hack to recording a single video and using it with many. And that is not to make the mistake that so many advisors make, and that's simply to drop a URL into an email, but it's to make it look like the actual video is living in your email. Now, there are a couple of tools out there that you can compress a video file, but it's still very difficult to send a video through email. Uh, Hopefully, 12 months, 24 months from now, that will be a thing of the past. But in the decade that we've been doing this, it has been a challenge because it's kind of like trying to stuff a beach ball through a straw. Like the
Yeah,
files are just too big. But how you can make your audience feel like they are being spoken to directly is to include what we call a thumbnail with a play button. And so that is just a screen cap or a screen grab of some piece of your video with your face in it with a play button on it. So when you drop that into even just a simple Outlook email and then hyperlink that image to the video, then when people open the email, they immediately know, hey, this is an email from Jack because I see his face. It is not canned content. It's much more enticing than just dropping a URL in there. And the next hack is to make sure you put the word video in the subject line because our inboxes are becoming more and more crowded. So if you're trying to stand out in an inbox, letting people know that there is a video will get more clicks, more opens for the email itself.
100%. There's a group we work with out in California who does the neuroscience research behind what you just described. And what they tell us is that today, most of us get some level of anxiety when we have to go into our inbox, just because there's so much there. And, we've got to turn on the filters mentally to figure out how we're going to process all that. And when you see that word video, it's kind of like, Oasis. At least this will be a little bit interesting. And you're absolutely right. I mean, you use Loom, we use Vidyard, and they both make it super easy to accomplish what you're talking about. And that's all well and good. One of the hidden benefits that people don't appreciate, and this goes back to my cinema background, the is retention. People retain more coming out of a video than out of a text message. And in your instance, if you where you're doing your video newsletter to your partners, you want them to remember some of that stuff. You don't want them to hit the pause button, every 35 seconds and go click on a link somewhere and do something. You want them to be able to watch the video, come away with that with some strong impressions that they're going to retain for a period of time, which really is the name of the game in marketing, right?
There is a statistic that you get 60,000 times the amount of information from 3 seconds of video than you do from reading 3 seconds of copy. And if you think about the the audio, the tone of voice, the gestures and the body language that you get from watching video, it's pretty incredible. And when it comes to being memorable, it's all about the story, because we walk away from interactions with people remembering less the statistics, less the bullet points and the takeaways, and more, how someone made us feel and the story that they told. I mean, you know, 2 days after you're listening to this podcast, you're probably going to remember Camp Lucky Duck and the fireworks about me much more than you're going to remember. You get 60,000 times the amount of
Yeah,
information from 3 seconds of video.
100%. Yeah, I mean, you're preaching to the choir on the storytelling thing, and I believe that is the big void in the video sales and marketing arena
Mhm.
right now. I think that the technology has made it so easy to make a video. The really the but the big value out of it is the story, is the
Mhm.
impression, is what you're trying to communicate. So the storytelling piece, and we talk to advisors about this all the time. They'll have access to a recording studio. A vendor or a wholesaler or someone will say, "Hey, look, we've got this great video studio here in Oshkosh, and you can come on in, and we're going to record you. Bring your script." And it's kind of like, what? You want me to write the script? So the script comes in and it reads kind of like 9 out of 10 advisor websites. I've been here I've been here in Idaho Falls for 22 years practicing holistic planning. I'm a fiduciary advisor who's a CFP, right? And so that's what their story is. And you're going, no, that's not your story. That's not why someone's going to buy from you. That's not differentiation. I mean, talk about the person you want to talk to. So I know you and your team have done a lot of work in this area. So talk a little bit about what advisors should be thinking in terms of the preparation. When we say do a DIY video, okay, so that means you kind of got your framework in mind. You thought about what is it that I'm going to say? What is my value prop? What is my CTA on this? How am I going to structure this? You've already got that in mind, and if you're early on in the process, you've got it in a script somewhere floating on the screen, right? But really, at the heart of this is the story, right?
Mhm.
We want to be able to connect with the person we're talking to at that emotional level, and that's really where our marketing team lives. Is how do we start to build those emotional connections with people? How do we start to take people down this journey to building trust? So your team's done an amazing job of that. I've seen some of the work you've done for your folks to help them share their stories with their prospects and clients. So give us a little behind the scenes peek at what you're doing for those advisors and what the advisors should be doing for themselves.
Well, if our listeners walk away from this with only one thing, I hope it is this. And that is the most powerful video you could possibly record for your business is your why story. And as you said, Jack, it can feel like a struggle, like a weight to try to figure out, well, what's my why? I didn't have some traumatic thing happen that led me to this business. I think the best place to start for figuring out what that story is and what will connect you with your prospects is going through the process of saying, why do I do what I do? Write down your answer or record it into your phone, and then ask yourself, but why? And then, go through that process again, getting a little deeper. And if you do that 6 or 7 times, taking yourself down a level and a level and a level, you're going to get to something that will resonate with other people. And then try it out. Try sharing that story with people you trust, with your partner or someone in your office, and see how it goes. Um, you know, that story can change over the years too. I used to tell a why story about this disastrous live shot I did from Washington, D.C. during George Bush's inauguration that really felt like it was the meltdown of my career. And then I went on from Omaha to work my way up to CBS in New York and then CNN. So that was more a story for me about on-cam performance. But a couple of years ago, my dad passed away, and my dad had been kind of my everything. He had been such a role model for me. He was an entrepreneur who showed me the way to running my own business. He was also that guy who, helped me get a car at 15, at 1964 Triumph TR4 convertible, and totally rebuilt it for me and then kept it running for a couple of decades for me. But my dad passed away about 2 years ago. And when he was in his 50s, he had started working with a financial advisor, and he loved this guy. His name was Kurt. I mean, Kurt would take all of his clients to a Kansas City Chiefs game once a year. My dad was a huge Chiefs fan. Like, this was the big win. And he worked with him for several decades. And all through that time, Kurt had all of my dad's beneficiaries' emails and phone numbers and addresses. But I didn't hear from Kurt until a couple of months before my dad passed away. And my dad had had a terminal diagnosis for 5 years. So Kurt knew that this was coming, and he didn't reach out. And for me, when, my dad's inheritance was split up, I immediately transferred the funds to a different financial advisor, because Kurt, while my dad had loved him, Kurt had never given me the time of day. And so for me, telling that kind of powerful story uh, not only speaks to, wow, there's a lot of money in motion in the next 20 years. And I really hope advisors are thinking about it and not becoming the Kurtz. But those are what make people realize, that A, you're human, and B, I can see where you're coming from and I can connect to you. So while you go through the process of asking yourself, why do I do what I do? And then, but why about that? And continuing to go deeper, also realize that story can evolve as you move through your career.
It's a great story. It really is. One of the things I hope that our listeners won't miss is the overlap between that story and Laura. Okay, so that story about her dad, that story about the financial advisor, speaks to the Lauras in that practice, right? So a good friend of ours says, well, a lot of people say, um, your clients don't care about your story until they know you care about their story, right? So in your story, it's not just about, how you got to this point in time, but it's also about where that leads you with respect to the person who's watching the video, right? So when you, I think that this process called the seven whys,
Mhm.
and so you ask, why is that important seven times, and eventually you get to what's important. So your thing about drilling down was super interesting to me. But that until you get to that point where you can see the nexus between your story and who you want to be a client, you haven't got through enough whys. So I would just challenge, our listeners, as you're doing that, it's a great process. Yeah, if you get through the first couple of whys, you're going to be better than 95% of the financial advisor videos that are out there, the why stories, but drill down just a little bit more, get that overlap. And I think that's really where the magic happens.
Yeah,
So
wait, Jack, I love the acronym, the WIIFM, the what's in it for me. And when it comes to crafting a great why story, it's about getting personal and telling a story that's memorable and then building the bridge to your prospects and why they should care about it.
yeah, 100%, 100%. Yeah. So we've got just a couple of minutes left. So do you mind sharing a little bit about what your team is doing with respect to testimonial videos? Yes, the why video is super important, but when you get into the nurturing process, at some point, the client's going to ideally get some social proof, and typically we think of that as Google reviews or something like that, right? But I love what your team is doing with the videos in that regard. Do you mind talking about that for a second?
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to say great things about yourself. It's entirely another thing if real clients are saying great things about you. When it comes to client testimonials, it surprises me how slow advisors have been to adopt. I mean, the SEC opened the door, I think it's been a year and a half. Feels like forever to me. And I have spoken to so many advisors who say, well, I don't want to step out of line with the ad rule. I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to end up getting fined. And the rules are really clear cut. Like, this isn't a gray area. You absolutely can use client testimonial videos in your marketing, um, as long as you follow what the SEC laid out for you. Uh, so when it comes to identifying the best people, I would say go back to your target audience. Who are my ideal clients? And then ask them, ask a couple of them. You will be surprised with clients who have been with you for a while how excited they will be that you asked them to be in a client testimonial video. I also think, we've said over and over, stories are what make us memorable. A really powerful testimonial video isn't just someone saying great things about you. It's actually sharing some of their own story. And what you're trying to do is get a prospect to see themselves in the video and start identifying, so they are mentally building a bridge to, oh, you are my answer. So, for example, we were just working with an advisor down in the Southwest, and she had a woman who had gone through an incredibly emotional story and was a fabulous advocate for this advisor and the work that she had done for her. And so the actual video starts out with the woman talking about how she was happily married and her husband got a terminal diagnosis while she was pregnant. Her husband passed away. Her baby was born, and she was out of her mind with questions and not knowing what to do next. And how the financial advisor she worked with, Kelly, had been there through it all and had made all the difference in her life. It doesn't have to be a story as emotional as that. We worked on a story for an advising team up in the Detroit area. They brought in a guy who had owned his own accounting firm for years, and he talked about how Arizona was his happy place. And that was sort of the beginning of the video. He loved to go on vacations to Arizona, and finally decided he was going to pull the trigger and get a second home, and how his advising team had been really instrumental in helping him get his hands in a very tight moving housing market on the funds he needed to make sure he got to close that deal. And that now he realizes he wishes he would have done it a decade ago, because he absolutely loves spending time there, and how his advisor had really made it all happen. It's much more memorable and much more authentic than someone just saying, yeah, hey, Laura and her team at Idea Decanter are great. They made a big difference for me.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Um, so there's just so many questions I have about that whole experience. I mean, how do, going from, would you mind doing a testimonial to, hey, would you mind if we recorded it? You know, I imagine there's a lot of conversation that goes on with the clients about that, right? So lower the stress, don't worry, you know, no hair, no makeup, so don't worry about that. So, well, as we're wrapping up, so what are a couple of things that Laura does when she's not helping advisors create brilliant videos that might surprise our listening audience?
Well, the majority of my non working time is spent at a hockey rink because I'm a hockey mom. I've got a 16-year-old son who we just got back from the Air Force Academy Hockey Showcase in Colorado Springs right before the 4th of July. That was one of his few hockey things going on in the next couple of months. But man, it is a long season from September. My son's team made it to nationals this year. There's not a lot of hockey out in the state of Washington where I am. So it was still a big deal, but maybe less of a big deal than for someone in the Northeast. But I am definitely a hockey mom. And until my son could drive starting this February, I spent a lot of time doing Idea Decanter work from my laptop at a hockey rink.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Wow. That's some commitment. Kudos to you and congrats to your son. That's an amazing accomplishment for him. So that's terrific. Any parting gifts you want to leave for our audience?
Get personal, tell stories, be memorable. It really will make a difference. And one last thing I'd like to say is that a mistake that is far too common with financial advisors is to equate video production with video marketing. You can make a video, but until you start effectively using your video, you are not marketing with that video. So don't fall into the trap of FOMO. Well, I need to get into video because other advisors are doing video. And then just record videos, because that doesn't work. You actually have to use them.
Well said. Well said. Hey, folks, this has been Laura Garfield from the Idea Decanter. Fabulous session. Thank you very much for joining us today, Laura. On behalf of InsureMark and the Breakthrough Advisor podcast, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us today. Thank you, especially Laura, for taking time out of your super busy schedule, especially with summer and the whole hockey thing going on. Thank you very much for doing that. Hey, folks, remember, please like, share, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We look forward to seeing you again on the next episode of the Breakthrough Advisor podcast. Thank you very much.